Well, hello and welcome again to the Pastor's Study. We have seen that God has opened up the door for Nehemiah to speak to the king and to present to the king his needs. And even when King Artaxerxes gave to Nehemiah a clear request, a clear open door to say whatever he wanted to, notice that Nehemiah begins again with, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in you." He starts by, again, thanking the king and saying, if you really want to do this, if I've found favor, if you really appreciate me, if I've served you well. And then he lays out for him some things that he needs. He says, first he says, I'd like you to let me go. I'd like you to send me back and let me do something. And he gives him a specific time frame as well. He looks at the king, and the king is sitting there with the queen, and the king looks at the queen, and they both agree to his request. And so he continues by giving him the time frame. He asks him that he gives him a letter that would allow him to have lumber from the king's forest, a letter that would grant him safe passage, a letter that would provide for all the materials and the things that he needed, the resources that he needed. God released the heart of the king, placed in his life this whole situation for Nehemiah, and so he provides that opportunity. And then he is released to go, and Nehemiah says in verse 9, I came to the governors by the river, and I gave them the king's letter, and I sent with me officers and armies and horsemen, and here is some great and mighty things that God has done. And yet, in the midst of all of this greatness and all of this good news, Nehemiah in verse 10 says, and when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite officials heard about it, it was very displeasing to them that someone had come back to seek the welfare of the sons of Israel. In the midst of all of this good news, in the midst of all of this God answering prayers, there is opposition about to arise. So, just because God opens doors and answers prayer does not mean that we will not have opposition right alongside us. But learn to trust God through it all. Until next time, goodbye, and may God bless.